What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It has been far too long since I posted my last video. I have been consumed again by Destiny, going flawless in trials this past weekend, getting ready for the hard mode raid to drop. As you can see, all my characters are at 385, 386 if they have the right weapons on, and I want to bring to you guys today a PvE build that has been absolutely dominating my gameplay for the last week, and it involves the swords, the exotic swords, arc sword, solar sword, and the dark drinker void sword that has been tearing up the new raid. So let's dive into it and take a look at this beast of a class that you can use in PvE and never run out of sword ammo. Alright, so as you can see in the footage in the background, I'm currently using my Hunter for this sword build. It is more beneficial, I believe, to use a Titan, as I will explain when I show you the pieces of gear that must be equipped to make this build effective. But in this footage, I'm just showing you how capable this class is on the Hunter character, the Warlock character, and the Titan character combined. So obviously for the Hunter and the Warlock, this build is more viable in splicer settings, so Archon's Forge, the Plague Lands, and the Raid, which generally speaking is most of Rise of Iron. So this build is viable across majority of the game, but if you're going to be doing strikes and other activities, this is why the Titan comes into play, being more effective across the entire game with this sword build. So as you can see in the footage, never really running out of sword ammo. The only thing you have to keep in mind when using this build is to maximize your regular melee swings, which is your right stick, and to use that as much as you can on your basic tiered enemies. When you encounter a lieutenant, that is when you want to use your increased attack, which is your trigger. That is going to one-shot these yellow servitors, the yellow captains. So that is how you maximize the effectiveness of this build. As you can see, I'm never really running out of ammo. I'm not really watching my ammo number because you replenish ammo so frequently that it's not anything to worry about. Now, as I get into the actual build and armor, I'm going to identify what you need in terms of intellect and discipline, because there is a basic strategy to having a maximum ammo on your sword at all times, and in terms of trying to get as many grenades as you can with this build. But as you can see, it's a very, very effective build. I'm never putting my sword away. I've done this in the raid. Becomes very effective in the raid for taking out elites, and it's just a fun class to use. There's some perks to it as well, as you regenerate your super much faster with certain gear equipped. So let's dive into the actual build as I break down some of the gear that I use on my Titan for the sword build. Alright guys, so let's dive into the armor that is needed for this build to be effective. Now, this build is only viable because of a new artifact that was released in this DLC, and it is the new sword artifact that allows you to reflect energy-based projectiles when guarding with the sword. It also provides increased sword ammo capacity. So having this artifact equipped is essential. This is a requirement for the build, and as you can see, you want to maximize, maybe not on this artifact as you can see, but if you look at the rest of my gear, you want to maximize intellect and discipline for this build. This is because while using an unlimited sword, you're never going to have an opportunity to use your melee, so there's no point in having any strength, in my opinion, for this build. Now, that being said, I don't have an intellect discipline sword artifact. It wasn't sold yet, so I will get it in the future. But through the gear, you can maximize your intellect and discipline. I am one off on my intellect. That is because I have not upgraded this helmet yet, but once I do, I will have that maxed out. So obviously, like it is in the title, this is a PvE build. It's one of the most fun builds I've ever used in PvE. Very effective in the raid, as I already said, because it one-shots many of the elites. I don't know how this is going to play out in hard mode raid that drops tomorrow, but we will find out. So let's get into starting with your swords. This build is viable for all swords. You do have to adjust your gear slightly based on the element of sword you're using, but the build is viable across all of these swords. So I'm going to describe it based on the Raise Lighter, but you can use the Dark Drinker or the Bolt Caster, and the only thing you have to be conscious of when you switch is your element. Like I said, that is because for, obviously, as you can see here, you have increased agility for 5 seconds after your solar double kill. That will proc if you are using the Raise Lighter. So if you decide to use the Bolt Caster, let's see what these boots have. Okay, these boots have solar as well, but if you have ones that have arc double kill or void double kill, you will like to use those boots when you switch to your other swords based on their element. So that being said, the only other thing I can show you that revolves around, I should say, the class that you choose. So whether you're a void, arc, or solar class is your chest armor. They usually all have a perk that either gives you increased armor when using an arc-based subclass or when you're using a solar-based subclass. So you kind of want to gear your chest to the class you are using. Now, I will describe this build based on using my Titan Defender. This is just because I like to use the Titan Defender in the raid, and when you combine the sword build with Weapons of Light, it becomes very, very effective against bosses as well. Right now, the strongest sword against the boss is the Dark Drinker. That's Axis, the last boss in the raid. But I believe the Raise Lighter is still the best one to use against elites. It's the fastest kill time, I believe, against your lieutenants and whatnot. But so you, like I said, you want to gear your sword element to your boots, and you want to gear your chest element in terms of increased armor to your subclass. Now, the one I choose to use for the Titan is the Armentarium. That is if I'm doing the raid, Archon's Forge, or just screwing around in the Plague Lands. That is because I gain an extra grenade. So I'm running around with usually 2 magnetic or 2 spike grenades. That's usually to take care of some of the exploding shanks, because you don't really want to go up and sword a exploding shank. You can use the shield tactic on the sword, which is your left trigger, I believe, for the guard. The shanks won't damage you too much when you guard for their explosions. But continuing on, I want to break down the sword perks that you should be using. So for example, you want to obviously have your increased ammo, and you can use this increased ammo as well to get to over 100 sword swings, but I don't think it's necessary for your raid and Archon's Forge and Plaguelands build. That is strictly because you are picking up enough ammo throughout that you never really need it, and the Warrior of Light damage increase is much more important so that you can one-shot elite enemies. The other one here, Thrive by the Sword, can be very useful if you want to have your super often. You can use this perk alongside a perk such as, let me go over here, gain bonus super energy from melee kills on minions in the darkness. Sometimes in this perk slot you can get increased super energy from heavy weapon kills, which is the one that you would want for your sword build. I have one on my Warlock, but I do not have one currently on my Titan. But if you can get that helmet, so you are increasing your super energy from heavy weapon kills, and you are stacking that with increased super energy from your sword kill, you can get your super very, very quickly. Another perk that you can have on your helmet that works across all swords is obviously Inverse Shadow, I think it's called, which is gain bonus super energy from killing minions of the darkness. So these are kind of the 2 perks that are viable for this build that you want to have on your helmet. Now, the helmet that I like to use in the raid, sometimes if I'm using the Void class, is the Glass House, but if I want the extra grenade, I go with the Armentarium. It really helps keep things under control, especially if I use suppression grenades to kind of stun some of the captains and whatnot in the raid. So that's kind of what the direction that I headed in. Now, the most important part for the Hunter, Warlock, and Titan sword builds are the gloves. So as I said earlier in the video, the Hunter and Warlock are most effective in Archon's Forge, Raid, and the Plague Lens. That is because the Raid gloves only give you increased heavy ammo drops from fallen enemies. This is why these gloves are necessary for Archon's Forge, Raid, and the Plague Lens. But the reason why the Titan, I believe, is the best build for an all-round sword build in terms of doing strikes on any planet and just story missions and whatever you want to do is because of this right here, which are the Rune Wings. Heavy ammo drops more often and contains more ammo in each drop. Now, the heavy ammo doesn't drop nearly as much as it does on the Raid gloves, but because it's giving you more ammo from each drop, it tends to even out over the course. So this is why the Titan is more effective all around the game with the sword build, because if you get out of Archon's Forge or the Raid, you pop on the Rune Wings and you pop on if I'm using a Void subclass, that's just a regular legendary Void armor, and I pop the Rune Wings on, and I can go into almost any strike and still use this sword build with great effectiveness. Sometimes if you feel like you are lacking heavy ammo drops when using the Rune Wings, you can go over to your Raised Lighter and substitute your damage for extra ammo. This will give you more time between requiring ammo drops, which should make up for that lack of ammo. But you won't necessarily need it. The Rune Wings still perform fairly well. So moving on into the last piece of the build. As I said earlier, obviously your primary, you can use whatever you want. I use the auto rifle from the Raid when I'm doing Archon's Forge and Splicer enemy consistent attacks, or strikes I should say, because it gets bonus damage against Fallen, but you can kind of use whatever you want. And because I'm using a sword, I tend to use a sniper as my special, just to kind of take cover from ranged enemies, and I can still do good DPS if I can't get close. That being said, if you encounter an enemy such as the Archon Forge Perfected Captain who you can't get close to use your heavy strike sword, you can switch over to your Bolt Caster, and it doesn't do as much damage as the Raised Lighter, but you can range enemies with your right trigger attack. So I tend to do that if I'm playing against like the Perfected Servitor who you can't really get close to, or the Perfected Captain. So as you can see, you can just switch up your sword, continue to use the build, switch your boots according to your arc sword, and you can keep rolling with your sword build. It's just very fun to use. You can continue to dash around the map using your heavy weapons, slicing enemies down in one hit. It's great for glimmer farming in the Archon's Forge, material farming in the Archon's Forge. As I will get into in another video, material farming and glimmer farming have a lot to do with ghosts and your consumables. I will get into that in another video if you guys would like. If you guys want that, definitely comment below and let me know that you guys want to know some of the material farming strategies that don't require marks and buying the materials from the vendor at the tower. It's a very effective method for farming worm spore as well that you can't get from the tower. So if you guys want that video, definitely comment in the comment section below, let me know. And also definitely like the video if this video helped you. If you guys want to know more about more builds, PvE, PvP based, I can definitely give you guys some more builds for Trials of Osiris, and just getting into more detail of how to make each of your characters more perfected for the different settings in Destiny. So I hope you guys liked the build. If there's anything that I missed, definitely let me know. I can help you guys out, but I think I did accomplish what I was going for in this build video. Like I said, maximize your intellect and discipline because you won't need strength. And then you can use the variety of swords based on the boots and the element type that you are using. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a thumbs up and comment any concerns or questions you have below in the comment section. And as always, guys, stay on the bean. You do you. Live life your way, because that's the way it's meant to be. Cheers, you beauties. Welcome back to the channel and another Destiny video. This is one of my favorite videos I have ever posted. I am sorry I've been on an intense grind with Destiny. Haven't been able to post a lot of videos, but this one I'm bringing with you guys.